So take it away, Lauren.
Okay, good evening to our listeners and to our viewers. We are coming to you live from KMUD with our KMUD News Candidate Forum with those in the bidding for Mendocino County's 3rd Supervisorial District. I'm your host, Lauren Schmidt.
And I'm going to be your co-host tonight, Matt LaFever. Mendocino County's District 3 includes Laytonville, Dos Rios, Covelo, Brook Trails, and Willits.
Residents in those cities and unincorporated towns will vote for one of the following candidates who have been listed in alphabetical order. That's Incumbent John Hashack and Challenger Clay Romero, who will serve as Mendocino County's 3rd District Representative for the next 4 years.
Mendocino County's Board of Supervisors enacts legislation that governs Mendocino County and determines policies for county departments, various special districts. They adopt the annual budget and they also fix salaries. The board also hears appeals of the Planning Commission decisions and considers general plan amendments. Ultimately, the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors mission is to create and maintain a responsive and responsible government that enhances the quality of life of the people of Mendocino County. The county's mission is to deliver services that meet public safety, health, social, cultural, education, transportation, economic, and the environmental needs of our communities.
Tonight, we will be asking candidates a variety of questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer, followed by a 1-minute rebuttal, which will be allotted to each candidate. Candidates who go over their 2-minute time frame will be muted to ensure equal airtime for all. I would like to note that KMUD is a neutral entity and we do not endorse or promote any individual candidate, political party, or ideal. It is our mission to inform, educate, and inspire our listening community.
We are going to be coming to you live on KMUD Radio, and we're also live streaming on our KMUD News Facebook page. And we invite members of the public to submit any questions by either calling the station at 707-923-3911 or go ahead and put your questions into the KMUD News Facebook page.
I would like to thank our engineer, Katie Phillips, our co-host, Matt LaFever, and our timekeeper, Stella Gherkins, for helping to organize this event that gives the public the opportunity to participate in democracy. And if you appreciate this service we provide for you here at Redwood Community Radio, please consider making a safe and secure donation on our website. That's kmud.org. Now, we will start with our candidate intros. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to share an introduction. Again, we're going to start in alphabetical order. I will note we will close in reverse alphabetical order, but we're going to start with you, John Hashack. 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, Lauren, and everyone out there in KMUD and Matt LaFever. Really appreciate how you're putting this together. A lot of organizing took place, so thank you for this service to the community. I'm John Hashack, the 3rd District Supervisor currently, and I'll just say, I've lived in Mendocino County since 1969. My mother brought us here when I was in the 5th grade. Lived in Willits, went to the Willits Public Schools. After that, I went to college, got my degree, everything. I went into the Peace Corps in Guatemala, spent 2.5 years there. And then after that, I came back to Willits and started working with migrant farm workers out of Ukiah and the Northern California area. After a couple of years of that, kind of work with as a parent involvement coordinator. I went to work at Willits High School teaching Spanish, and I taught in the Willits schools for the next 28 years before I ran for county supervisor. I was very active in the Union California Teachers Association. I was a local president for 20 years and involved in all levels of the California Teachers Association up to the state level, chair of the budget committee, on the political action committee, those kind of activities. And then I ran for supervisor. And at the time I ran, it was a question about what kind of government did we have. We had supervisors who gave themselves an almost 40% raise. And when that happened, I said I wasn't going to take that raise. And after I was elected, I created a scholarship fund for students in Willits, Laytonville, and Covelo. And since that time, I've given out $27,000 of scholarships to those students. And students who are going into public service, because that's what my life has been about. And I believe that we need to encourage more people to go into public service. And the key issues at that time were good governance, safe communities, and the economy. And to this day, the issues for the 3rd district, 30 seconds. And to this day, the issues for Mendocino County and the 3rd district certainly are good governance, the economy, and safe communities. So with that, I'm John Hashack. I appreciate being here this evening, and thank you.
Thank you. Clay Romero, 3 minutes.
Yeah, good evening, all. Yeah, I'm Clay Romero. I moved to Laytonville with my folks in 1974, and I attended Laytonville High School. I graduated in 1978. In that same year of 1978, I began my career as a machinist by pushing a broom around at Remco Hydraulics in Willits. I also worked at the gun manufacturing facility as well when it was there in Willits. It's been kind of a tough time doing machine work over a long period of time, but for the most part, it hasn't killed me yet, and I try to keep going and making sure that things will work out well. I've actually been in business at my own shop since 1994, and primarily what I do here is I build a lot of parts and pieces that are used by the electronics assemblers to automate the assembly of printed circuit boards. It's been a very, very challenging time, but they seem to be coming back because my parts are always good. I look at it very, very carefully, and I inspect things, and I do absolutely everything here in this day and age in my shop. It's actually working out reasonably well now. But that's about all I have for you at the moment. But I certainly look forward to representing people, and I'm confident that things will work out well in this election. I've got a lot of very, very good backing, and I'm grateful for it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, this first question. Can you talk about the main issues facing Mendocino County's 3rd district and how you plan on solving them? This first one goes to you, Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, probably among the primary issues, I would say would be probably water. Water is a very big issue. I know that there's some concern about Lake Pillsbury in particular. I would really like to see that Lake Pillsbury is not removed, but actually to raise Scott Dam. I know that this is actually a very doable project, and can be funded by the State Water Bond Act of 2014. I'm also in favor of seeing what I could do about maybe establishing another location for another lake. I would like to see this done so as at least there will be some insurance, some more water available to allow for the Eel River to remain in its wild and scenic status during times of drought. I would certainly like to be very favorable to people that want to be able to build their own reservoirs for catching rain runoff and this sort of thing. But we'll have to see what happens when it comes to the state regulations and how they're gonna want to deal with that.
30 seconds.
But I certainly want to do my best to make sure that that we have more water, even though we're currently in a drought condition. I know that there's going to be some amount of rain coming back at some point. It doesn't go on forever, but we'll see how it goes. But at least I want to be prepared to catch the rain and keep things running. Thank you.
Okay, John Hashack, same question. Talk about the main issues facing Mendocino County's 3rd District and your plans on solving them. 2 minutes.
Okay, well, like I said before, there's 3 key issues. It's good governance, meaning are we being transparent? Are we being accountable to the taxpayers? And is there accessibility to our local government? I think that I've really worked hard on all 3 of those things during this pandemic. I've been very transparent. I've been communicating with the people. I've been accessible even during the pandemic with the Zoom meetings and everything. But and holding the government accountable. Okay. The second issue is the economy, and what are we doing about creating an economy that works for everyone. Okay, so I've been working on career and technical education. We started a program at Mendocino College for EMT and paramedics. I've been working on the broadband issue. The state government's giving out $6 billion, and Mendocino County is going to get its fair share to create broadband and middle mile to get fiber optic cables to Covelo, to up the 101 corridor, that area. The cannabis is crucial for our economy, and I've been on the task force since the day I got onto the board, and I've been working every day on cannabis issue to create a healthy economy. And then certainly water, like Clay said, that's a key issue. And then safe communities, emergency access routes. We're dealing with climate change, that we have to create safer communities because of tree mortality and increasing aridity and all those issues. So those are the key issues: good governance, economy, and safe communities.
Right in the nick of time. Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yeah. I find myself in agreement with John on the items he mentioned. I do very much want to see that we emphasize things that deal with safety, water, food, and energy. Energy is certainly not a big thing going on as yet, but I would like to see these things all brought into place and to make things at least stable in case calamity happens with other areas around us. Yeah, thank you.
John Hashack, 1 minute.
All right, so as far as safe communities, I've been working really hard to create these emergency access routes that were in disarray for one way in, one way out communities. We've got the climate change, which is causing this tree mortality and increased aridity. We're in this 1,200-year-old drought, that who knows when we're going to come out of it. I've been working tirelessly as a ad hoc for the drought task force, and I'm proud to be endorsed by the sheriff and other people working in emergency services. Okay, and former sheriff or former fire chief Sue Carberry and many, many others who are working on creating safer communities. And so the economy, good governance, and safe communities.
Thank you, gentlemen. For the next question, we're going to start with John. As you know, 3rd District is not a monolith. I want to ask you, we've got Laytonville, Covelo, Willits. How are the needs of these 3 communities different, and how would you approach addressing their needs?
Well, I think that the needs are different because they're certainly different communities. They have a lot in common, but Willits has a city council, and that takes care of a lot of the issues within the city of Willits. Okay. The Laytonville has a MAC, which has been long standing, and they provide advice, advise the board about what their issues are. And I'm very pleased to be endorsed by the chair of their MAC, Jim Shields. And then we created a MAC, a Municipal Advisory Council in Round Valley. It's called the Round Valley Area MAC. And they have they've been working really hard in cleaning up the area, in talking with Caltrans, getting programs in. And so it's been very effective. I'm very pleased to be endorsed by the chair of their MAC, Charles Sargenti. And so it's working together with each of these communities, finding out what are their unique issues, what they want to work on as a community, and then going with that. You know, in the city of Willits, we're working on a tax share agreement with the county, you know, so that they can expand and provide more housing, which is critical for Mendocino County. In Laytonville, you know, we are looking at water hauling, water extraction, some of those issues. And I'm very proud to work with the MAC on those issues, and also the school districts and the Healthy Start. They're those programs that provide those services for the community. And in Covelo, we're working, like I said, on cleaning up the community, but also we're looking at a water system and doing studies about finding out what their aquifer can handle, their the extraction of water and hauling it up into the hills. You know.
Oh, sorry, John.
That's time, John. We'll make sure to get that warning to you next time. Same question to you, Clay. How do you see the needs different between Willits, Laytonville, Covelo, and how would you address those needs?
Well, I think that Willits would be very good for having more manufacturing going on. This is probably the last place where it's easy to get raw materials in so as they can be produced. And I'm talking about metal products here. And I would like to see that continue on. I know that they're very, very concerned about the water here as well. And I certainly want to do what I can to make sure that things are going to go smoothly there. There's some amount of cannabis growing here, and that's been a bit of a problem lately. Actually, a lot of a problem, because the county, from what I'm gathering from the growers, they're telling me that things are taking far too long. They have to put up large amounts of money beforehand. There needs to be a policy change here. The same thing applies with cannabis up in the Laytonville area, where they're very much struggling, trying to make ends meet and to be able to at least continue on, because currently we have an oversupply condition and the markets are just not there right at the moment. Now, out in Covelo, I found that it was a very, very economically depressed area. It is tough. And I was interested to find that when I went out there, that, that they asked me, hey, could you help me pull a car out of a creek? And I said, well, yeah. So I'm actually working on helping them do that very thing, because they were currently prevented from doing so by another government agency that was objecting to them going into the creek. So I look out for the people and try to handle the things in as simple and helpful as way in a.
All right, Clay, that is your 2 minutes. I want to provide John a minute response.
Well, one of the commonalities of the three areas is cannabis. And I've been working very hard on creating a cannabis policy that works for the small growers. You know, fortunately, we were able to defeat the corporate cannabis increase, the new ordinance that some of the board members were pushing. And you know, each day I've been working on these issues that are key to the people in the communities, and it's working with the people, listening to what their issues are and coming up with solutions. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance and the Covelo Cannabis Advocacy Group. those are key groups that are working on these economic issues. So thank you.
Clay, you have an opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal.
Yeah, I agree. The issue of cannabis is a very large issue, and I know that it will negatively impact the county as a whole because it's a significant form of economic activity. I nonetheless am very, very interested in bringing more manufacturing to this area. It's something that I do, and it's something I'm very familiar with, and certainly want to give good favored status for those that would want to manufacture new products. Particularly in Willits would be a very good base to operate from, and we do have places in which we can actually do that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. This next question, do you have ideas on how to bolster rural healthcare and mental health in your district? And this goes to you, Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, as far as healthcare goes, I looked very interested in that there was a measure, let's see, it was Measure B, Mental Health Treatment Act money in Mendocino County, where there was recently a crisis residential treatment facility that opened on April 25th of this year. I think this is a very good start. This is a good base on which to operate from. And I would like to encourage all those that are coming across mental health care problems to look up this facility and inquire about what they can do to help. I know just in general, I think it's safe to say that when you look the world over, excuse me, not the world, but at least the county and the local area, I would say that the vast majority of people are over medicated. I would like to call on the people that are out there, please, if there's anything that you could do, see if you can give up the drug habit, minimize your drinking to a small level. And I think you would be rewarded with a community that has a whole lot less crime and problems associated with it. Yeah, thank you.
John Hashack, 3 minutes. 2 minutes, sorry about that, 2 minutes.
Repeat the question, Lauren.
Not a problem. Do you have ideas on how to bolster rural healthcare and mental health care within your district? 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, like Clay was saying, yeah, Measure B was the funding for mental health services. And I've been on the ad hoc committee working on that. Since the time I've been working on that ad hoc, we have opened up the training center. We just did that a couple of weeks ago. That's in Redwood Valley. And that is to provide training for first responders and mental health workers to really learn how to work with people who are having mental health issues. Okay, so we don't want conflict where something should be de-escalated. We also opened up the crisis residential treatment just a couple of weeks ago, and we are going to open up PUF. We're going to start the design and construction of that very soon. We've committed to that as a board. There are also other programs that, the mobile outreach programs where mental health workers go out with sheriff deputies and reach out to the people. And instead of escalating, we want to de-escalate. There's a lot of other programs going on about aftercare for people who've had mental health, have been hospitalized, and how to get them so they don't end up going back into the hospitals. And then there's also community awareness and destigmatization.
30 seconds.
Mental health issues. On the health care side, I've been working on community health worker programs and trying to get those implemented. We have blue zones going on with the Adventist health system. Healthy families, I'm on the first 5 commission, and that's taken care of from prenatal up to 5 years. So all of those programs are great programs for Mendocino County. I was just in Laytonville at a health fair this afternoon. And so.
All right, that's time. Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yes. It's I appreciate what John has done there. I think we're very much in agreement with that. I know that just because someone has a mental health problem, I certainly don't want to see any stigma go along with that. People are, whether it's their mind or if it's a broken leg, it's still a very serious matter that needs to be attended to and not to be overlooked or belittled in any way at all. So I think that's about all I have for that one, but thank you very, very much.
John Hashack, 1 minute.
All right, we just came out of this pandemic or COVID. And one of the things I was very proud to work on and get started was this pilot program in Willits called the Promotores de Salud program. It was through Nuestra Alianza, and they became the umbrella agency for it. It was to get people who were from the Hispanic, Spanish-speaking community to be able to reach out to get the information out to that community, because we know that there are disparate health results in different communities. And so what we did was we got communication out there, we got information, we told people to get vaccinated, we told people what the COVID was, how they needed to keep safe. And it's been 30 seconds. It's been 15. It's been very successful. The community health worker program is taking that idea of getting to those communities and expanding it throughout the county.
All right.
All right, gentlemen, we're cooking here. John, we're going to have you answer the next question to begin. So fatal overdoses are on the rise in Mendocino County. We see that associated with fentanyl, this street available opioid, more potent than heroin. Do you support stricter sentences and increased law enforcement regarding these the availability of this drug, or more of a harm reduction measure approach, or both?
Well, this whole fentanyl issue goes back to the opioid crisis that we've been dealing with as a country. You know, the drug dealers in this, the opioid crisis were the drug manufacturers. And so right now, the County of Mendocino has been suing, along with every other jurisdiction in this country, these manufacturers. Were going to get a settlement to help us get out of this opioid crisis that has been, sponsored by the drug manufacturers. So with that, I would like to see programs that really take these people, deal with their addictions, which in many cases are no fault of their own. They're overprescription of some of these drugs, and then the fentanyl is a new issue that's come along. But let's treat these just like we would do mental illness or other healthcare issues, and try to get these people off of these drugs and leading productive lives, because I'm sure they want to lead productive lives and don't want this addiction that's being caused by these drugs. So I would certainly look for a way of providing those outreach services, drug addiction services that we have in this county, but they need to be all throughout the county, not just in Ukiah. We need to have outreach to the far reaches of the 3rd district, the 4th district.
30 seconds.
Throughout the northern part of the county. And so I don't really see greater law enforcement being the cure for this kind of issue. It really has to be treatment oriented. Thank you.
Yeah, Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Yes, the issue of the opioids and the fentanyl coming in, and we're talking about illegal drug pushing here. I would very much like to ramp things up as far as law enforcement goes to halt the people that are bringing this in. I know that the whole issue of pain management started with regular pharmaceuticals or prescription pharmaceuticals from doctors who were trying to alleviate the pain of their patients. But as time went on, I can see where this is a very difficult path for people to continue on, because then they're going to have to start reaching out for the opioid products or fentanyl as it is. And I think this is a very terrible thing. I think that the people, they should be afforded help for the type of pain that they're encountering, or if there's some sort of mental illness going on. And I would very much like to support that. But for people that are bringing in fentanyl or opioids in an illegal manner, they're basically drug pushers. I would like to ramp things up for really curtailing this sort of activity, so as they can simply not continue on with that. There'll be a harsh penalty to pay for their drugs. Okay, thank you very much.
And John Hashack, 1 minute.
Yeah, so with in Mendocino County, again, we have the Ford Street Foundation, which treats people with addiction problems. And we need to have more of those services spread out throughout the county. You know, some of our rural health clinics are doing tremendous jobs, but some of these issues are beyond the scope of what they can deal with. So we need to provide these services in all of the rural health clinics and into far reaches. You know, Covelo often feels like they don't get enough representation or services from the county. And that's one of those issues that they have a big issue with fentanyl up there. And so we need to provide services where they're needed.
Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yes, I would like to echo what John just said there. I think that's correct. I certainly want to see better services in place to help these people. I know that certainly in Covelo, there's somewhat less going on there than in previous times, and this would give rise to some amount of drug activity there, and I would like to put a stop to that. But that's all I have for now on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, got this next question. Did you receive the COVID-19 vaccine? Why or why not? And can you comment on Mendocino County's response to the pandemic? I believe, John, you answered first last. So Clay, this question goes to you.
Okay, no, I'm probably the most fortunate guy on the face of the planet. During the time in which the COVID virus had first started, I've largely been inside of my shop, which is a metal building that houses all the equipment, and I'm here very, very, very commonly. So I've never had any good reason to do that sort of thing. I'm also in pretty good health, so I don't have any comorbidities. But as far as the COVID virus public health orders, I found that there was something that really caused me a bit of pause. I see where there was a public health order by Andy Coren, and they identified a COVID-19 case as someone that tested positive, someone that had symptoms that were similar to the COVID-19, although it could also be the common cold, or it was something that was identified as a case just by the public health department. In going along with that, I see that Andy Coren had listed down that the health officer may take additional actions, which may include detention or requiring one to stay at a health facility or other location to protect the public's health, if an individual who is subject to this order violates or fails to comply with this order. As soon as I read that, I thought this is completely unacceptable. That you would only see talk like this.
Seconds.
You would only see talk like this from like a Russian gulag prison camp or something. Who in the right mind in America would tell people that we're gonna require you to stay at some other facility or stay in a different location because they believe you to be COVID virus positive.
Okay, John Hashack, same question, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I was waiting anxiously to get the COVID vaccine. And when it came out, I got it immediately as soon as I could. And so, yeah, I've gotten both the vaccines and the boosters, and I believe that everyone should. Or, it's up to it's your decision, but it makes sense too. And that's what the doctors are recommending. When I was the chair of the board, and this was in 2020, that's when COVID broke out. And we had a lot of unknown situations to deal with at that time. I'm very proud of the way the board reacted and the CEO at the time. We worked together well, and we worked with Dr. Doohan and then with Dr. Corin. And my philosophy was, let's listen to what the experts, the medical experts, what they have to say. Because at that time, we did not know if we were going to have 90% mortality rates or 10% or 2%. We had to line up, what happens if we had thousands of people dying in Mendocino County, and so we had meetings every night about what was happening, how to get testing. The county was very proactive in getting the testing here and the vaccines here. And our numbers are lower than the state average. And California's numbers are a lot lower than most other states. So I'm very proud that what we did in Mendocino County kept people safe, because we've had 1 million people die of COVID in the United States. And in Mendocino County, it's something like 130. So thank you.
Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yeah, I thought that the response to the COVID virus was very much overdone. I know that it's one thing for government authorities to tell people what they need to do in order to avoid this sort of thing. It's quite another matter when they mandate such restrictions. I also found that these restrictions or these government mandates were also not in accord with the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which requires equal protection under the law. So I'm a little disappointed in that. I know it's one thing to shut down your country or your community for a couple weeks or a month to control a virus, but anything more than that would be more for controlling people, which it absolutely did, but it did not necessarily control the virus. Thank you.
Okay, John Hashack, 1 minute.
All right. Well, I guess Mr. Romero has a different point of view, because I guess he understands how long the shutdown should have been. Obviously, it was too long it was very long, but we were listening to the medical experts. And it would have been much worse if we didn't do what we needed to do. And I believe that what Mendocino County did was appropriate. We've kept the numbers. We've down, like I said, the mortality rate in Mendocino County was lower than the rest of the state, and certainly lower than per capita than the United States. And so some of the things were very difficult. I was a teacher, and closing schools was very hard to see, but it did keep people safe, and we're hopefully doing the precautions we still need to do, because COVID is still here with us.
Thank you, John. The next question is going to start with you. We're going to focus on wildland fires. As you know, a large portion of District 3 is part of that wildland urban interface, the fire-prone region. How would you bolster fire preparedness and other emergency efforts and emergency planning?
Great question, Matt, and I appreciate it, because that's one of the things I've worked on since day one as a supervisor. The emergency access route issue is critical. When I came on, there were these emergency access routes out of brook trails that had been in disrepair, were not usable, and overgrown, washed out, all of those things. And since then, I've worked to get that Furco road open. And I appreciate Mr. Romero. He was a owner of part of that and agreed to let us do the work that we needed to do. And so working with CAL FIRE, working with the Brook Trails Fire Department and the Sherwood Firewise community, we were able to open up that Furco road, you know, to make it a shaded fuel break. So when the Oak Fire happened a couple of years ago, that the firefighters were able to get in and use that, and people could evacuate in the 2 lanes leaving Sherwood Road, Brook Trails communities. The sheriff said it was the best evacuation he'd seen in 30 years of being in the sheriff's office. But the other things we need to do is, and I'm proud that the board has agreed to it, is we fully funded the Mendocino Community Fire Safe Council for 5 years, because they do great work. You know, we've got huge issues with fire safety in our communities because we've got this climate change, we've got tree mortality, we've got the increased aridity. And so what are we doing? I'm working with the fire safe councils for Sherwood area, for Pine Mountain. There's a new one starting in Ridgewood area. Laytonville's got great.
Sorry about that, John.
Thank you, John. Clay, opportunity to address this same question. How would you bolster fire preparedness and other emergency efforts and planning in the 3rd District?
Well, it's interesting that John had mentioned about the Furco Road, because that was something that early on, I worked with Todd Patton of CAL FIRE to establish an access for firefighting vehicles to enter Brook Trails through the Furco Road. And it was something that I worked on, and by my signing on to the agreement, it also encouraged Richard Padula, which unfortunately is no longer with us. He signed on to it, as well as the people that owned the former Louisiana Pacific mill site down at the bottom of the hill. And because of that, we were able to get things going, and I was able to push and authorize this to get it into place. I think it worked out very well when the Oak Fire arrived. I did check with the fire people at the time. They didn't have to actually open up both lanes of Sherwood Road, as one lane seemed to work fine. But at least I know that at this point, 2 lanes coming out Sherwood Road is a huge benefit for people getting out of there. I too, though I might be critical of some of the boards and commissions, of which there's 34, the one that I'm not going to be critical of is the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council, because I have also interacted with them as well. I would also like to see that the clearing of brush, I would like to see where the clearing of brush is incentivized, so as people will take it upon themselves to go forward and remove brush on their property as best as possible. I certainly don't want to see people penalized when they don't get things done in time, but I do want to see them encouraged to move forward and to clear out the brush, so as we can all have a little bit better chance of getting out of the fire in case we get a bad fire going. Thank you.
Thank you, Clay. John, 1 minute opportunity to respond.
Well, I think that we have these emergency access routes for in the Sherwood Road area. But the whole issue is how many one-way in, one-way out communities we have in Mendocino County. And what I've been working on is a pilot program, creating a county service area 3, which would allow for the assessment of parcels within a zone of benefit to pay for the upkeep of those emergency access routes. You know, there's lots of other things that really being done well in the county, like the community emergency response teams. And I just talked to Mike Carter, who's a trainer for that. He's endorsing my candidacy. And we've got a lot of really good things where people are taking action together to make their communities safer.
Thank you, John. Clay, 1 minute to respond.
Okay. Yeah, I think that overall the response for doing what we can to minimize the threat of fire has been actually quite good in this county. I know even going back many years ago, I found that the volunteer fire guards are probably the fastest guys on the face of the planet. They're very rapid. I do know though that we have still drought conditions, and I'm certainly concerned that people can get out in a timely fashion. I know for me, when I just for my own place, if I come across something very difficult, I'm just going to run down to the road and jump in Lake Emily if there's no other way to get out. And so I would expect other people to have some kind of backup plan. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. I do want to go to a question from one of our callers. With that, John Hashack, actually, Clay Romero, we're going to start with you on this one.
Okay.
Caller called 707-933-3911 here at KMUD and asked about public transit. Currently, it's my understanding there is no public transit north of Willits. Do you have any ideas on how we could change that for those Laytonville residents? 2 minutes, Clay Romero.
You know, that's something that I haven't looked at in any great extent, but it would be good to have, some kind of schedule for the MTA to be going up into Laytonville. It's interesting. I'm surprised that they're not going there already, and it does provide a very valuable service. Although I am concerned that the ridership is sufficient to actually support it. So I would hope that would be the case, but I don't know until I look at the numbers on it and see what can be done and what it costs, because we can't just be running something that's losing money at the same time. Yeah, thank you.
John Hashack, same question, 2 minutes.
Yeah, the North County hasn't had good public transportation. And I think that, Laytonville, it's a need, it's an unmet need, as they say in the Mendocino Transit Authority. So these unmet needs are such as, North County, Laytonville, senior, transportation, also for Covelo. It's a huge issue. I've been dealing with people lately who are on dialysis, who have to go to Ukiah 3-4 times a week for several hours. And so here we go, especially, even in the best of circumstances, it's a 3-hour round trip. And when it's stormy weather, it could be 4 or 5 hours, depending on the road conditions. And so there's no public service, no public transportation for these people. And we need to do better. Like Mr. Romero said, it is a thing of finances, but the state government is putting a lot of money behind finances or transportation these days. And so we need to look at what kind of grants are out there, how we can do better to serve these unmet needs throughout the northern part of Mendocino County, because it is a critical issue.
You, Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yeah, as I listened to John's response, and I'm appreciative of it. One of the things I thought of, and I think this could be possible, especially if there's somebody out in Covelo, where there's more than a few people going on, to bring the facilities out to their general area. I certainly don't mean to put it in clear out, but certainly in Round Valley would be very appropriate to have dialysis facilities, as well as in Laytonville, because this is an important issue, and I'm very understanding that currently the price of fuel is not cheap. So I would want to do what I can to where they would have those facilities so they don't have to travel. Thank you.
John Hashack, 1 minute.
Yeah, another part of this component of public transportation is reducing the greenhouse gas emissions for Mendocino County. And one way we do it is by public transportation. You know, I'm part of the Mendocino Council of Governments. We've been looking at electric vehicles. We even got an electric bus in Willits now. So let's try to increase our efficiency, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, because that's critical in this time of climate change. And let's see if we can get you know, one of these electric buses up to Laytonville. If there's a demand for it and people are willing, and Covelo, if there's the demand and people can really say, we're going to use it, then let's get it going.
Thank you. I believe we have a time for one more question before we take a brief break at the top of the hour. So with that, along with transportation in Laytonville, Mendocino County does not have an emergency operations center. Do you support the sheriff's office in securing an EOC that can be fully activated for 24-hour operations if necessary when an emergency or the threat of an emergency occurs, to serve as a centralized conduit of information? Why or why not? John, this goes to you.
Yeah, certainly. We need to have an emergency operations center. And in the past, they've kind of used this Donovan room in the sheriff's office. But we need to have a place that's has all the equipment ready for them, you know, because if an emergency happens, we need to be ready to go. And so these people need to have a place for work. I totally support what the sheriff's request for having an emergency operations center. I think right in the main campus, probably where the cannabis department is right now, would be a great building for them. They say it has enough size and would be sufficient. So it's got to have internet. It's got to have accessibility to the sheriff's office and the county administration. So I'm supportive of the sheriff's request for an emergency operations center, and I hope that that happens very soon. We have been waiting for this facilities assessment, and so that's one of the things that's been holding it up somewhat. But that's supposed to come out in June, and with that, hopefully we can move forward with a building for emergency operations.
Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I too would like to see an operation facility be put in place for Laytonville as well as Covelo. I know that when I had first moved to Laytonville in 1974, they had nothing there. If you had a very serious accident, you essentially died. They actually do have some amount of facilities there for dealing with the typical accidents and the things that would happen on the highway in particular. And so it's far, far better than it was when I had first moved there. But there's other things though that would be far greater disasters that would be very, very helpful to have that there. And I would be in agreement with trying to get things set up and funded so as all these critical pieces can be in place for when there's some sort of disastrous situation that occurs. Thank you.
John Hashack, 1 minute.
Well, I think the issue is really, how do we best address these disasters, whether it's wildfires or earthquakes or power outages, you know, when they happen, or with the pandemic, we had to set up an emergency operations center. So what's the best way of dealing with those as a county and coordinating all the emergencies providers, those responders, whether it's CAL FIRE, Office of Emergency Services, FEMA, all of those entities that come into play, whether they're state, local, or federal, and they're all needing a place to coordinate their activities. And so we need to have that, and I totally support the sheriff. That's why I'm proud to be endorsed by the sheriff.
Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yeah, Yeah, I certainly would. Again, I'm very supportive of what is necessary for the emergency operations centers, and would like to see them be able to continue and be funded fully. Perhaps a grant may be necessary for this. I would be in favor of that, and want to see things go along as smoothly as possible. So yeah, thank you very much for the question, and I'll see what I can do if the good Lord shines on me and I get elected. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a very brief break. I'm going to throw it to our engineer, Katie Phillips, who's got a little business to take care of, and we'll be right back.
Thanks so much, everyone. It is 6:55 here at Redwood Community Radio. And I'll tell you that this program has been supported in part by Eel River Realty, specializing in Southern Humboldt homes and property. Eel River Realty is located in Miranda and can be reached at 707-223-5583. A search of all Humboldt County listings can be found at www.eelriverrealty.com. Support for KMUD comes from Sohum Health in Garberville. With same-day, next-day clinic appointments available, lab and radiology services 7 days a week, you won't have to take off work for lab tests. Other services include pediatric care, mammograms, CT scans, and the only 24/7 ER in Southern Humboldt County. Visit sohumhealth.org or call 707-923-3921 to learn more. We also want to thank NorCal Mechanical. They support KMUD NorCal provides for over last 44 years experience building and maintaining sustainable living environments in Humboldt and Mendocino counties. They offer design, service, and repair of heating and cooling units, commercial refrigeration, indoor air quality products, efficient water-saving plumbing, and fire sprinkler systems. NorCal Mechanical can be reached at 707-223-2100 or norcalmechanical.com. And according to the DHHS, the best way to protect yourself and your family from COVID-19 is by getting vaccinated or boosted when eligible. Health officials continue to stress that vaccination and booster shots can reduce hospitalizations and deaths, as well as reduce impacts of the virus to schools and businesses. Vaccinations are available free of charge, and appointments can be made at myturn.ca.gov. For more information, call Humboldt County Public Health at 707-445-6201. This message has been brought to you by the Humboldt County Department of Health and Human Services. You are listening to Redwood Community Radio, KMUD Garberville 91.1 FM. KMUE Eureka 88.1 FM, KLAI Laytonville 90.3 FM, and we're always on the World Wide Web at kmud.org. Our FM translator is K258BQ out in Shelter Cove, and we are working with the KMUD News Department to bring you the Mendocino District 3 Supervisorial Candidate Forum.
Okay, thank you so much, Katie, and good evening to our listeners and to our viewers. I do want to remind everyone that you do have it tuned to the KMUD News Candidate Forum with those in the bidding for Mendocino County's 3rd Supervisorial District. I'm your host, Lauren Schmidt.
And I'm your co-host, Matt LaFever. We are joined by the following candidates who've been listed in alphabetical order. Incumbent John Hashack and challenger Clay Romero, who would serve as Mendocino's 3rd district representative for the next 4 years.
Each candidate has been given 2 minutes to answer questions, followed by a 1-minute rebuttal, which is allotted to each. Candidates who go over that 2-minute time frame will be muted to ensure equal airtime for all. I would like to remind listeners that KMUD News is a neutral entity, and we do not endorse or promote any individual candidate, political party, or ideal. It is our mission to inform, educate, and to inspire our listening community.
We are coming to you live on KMUD Radio, and we are also live streaming on our KMUD News Facebook page. If you've missed the first hour of this event, you can find it in our archives at kmud.org. Okay,
All
we're
right.
going to go to our next question.
We are. I also would like to remind listeners that feel free to give us a call at 707-923-3911. Participate in democracy and share your questions, as well as those watching on our live feed. By all means, type a question in the chat and we'll do our best to get it answered. All right, our next question. Mendocino has experienced a severe drought for several years. Do you have creative solutions for drought resiliency? Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. It's something I alluded to a little bit earlier, but I think we do need to prepare the lands we have to capture more water in lakes or reservoirs. Now, perhaps one of the best ways of storing more water is to the raising of Scott Dam at Lake Pillsbury. I think this would be a very easy solution. And it could be funded by the State Water Bond Act of 2014. Now, I know that these funds are still available via a grant. I also am aware that there was a study done back in 1982 that looked at 13 areas in Northern California for building lakes that should be reviewed. I'm aware that one of those was the Warm Springs Dam area that extended in between Cloverdale and Lytton Springs. It's a little bit outside of our area, but I know it could be very helpful as well. So I certainly want to see at least one more lake be able to be put into Mendocino County, so as we would have a greater water capacity that could potentially be fed into the Eel River when we have times of drought like we have currently. So that's about all I have on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. John Hashack, same question, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for that question, because drought is this critical issue for our economic development, for the environmental well-being of our area, and just for our survival as a species. You know, we're in this 1,200-year drought, and we don't know when it's going to end. You know, like I've said before, that with the climate change, we're seeing tree mortality, we're seeing hotter summers, we're seeing farmers that have to plant different crops now. Summers are hotter, longer, drier. And so what do we do about that? I've been on the ad hoc dealing with this for the last year and a half. I brought forward the resolution to declare this a state of emergency. And that happened, the board passed that the day before the governor came out, which he told us the night before, came out and gave his speech on the bottom of Lake Mendocino, which was something like 42 feet below the water level. So what can we do about it? We need to conserve. And I just read on CNN that the North Coast was doing a pretty good job in conservation of water, but we need to do better. We need to increase our storage capacity. You know, I don't know about this increasing the height of Scott Dam. I don't think that's going to do it. And I think that'd be incredibly expensive at this point. But we need to look at interties between different water agencies. And we need to look at studies. We need to understand what's in our aquifers, because we don't have, outside of the Ukiah area, we don't know what's in the aquifers really. And so we need to study the quality and the quantity of the water there. And we've been working on standing up a water agency for Mendocino County, which could deal with a lot of those issues and grant right. And so all of those issues are critical for water security.
Okay, Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I have it on very, very good authority that to raise the Scott Dam is really very, very doable, and it's not quite as expensive as all that, and the money would be there for it, although it would require a grant. I nonetheless want to see about at least having more water availability, so as we can help out those that are near us as well. And I appreciate the concept of tying things together so as we can transfer water somewhat more easily. Thank you very much for that question, though.
Okay. John Hashack, 1 minute.
Yeah, in the last year that I've been on this ad hoc dealing with the drought, we've been able to get $23.3 million of grants to deal with water projects in Mendocino County. And all the way from, Mendocino got $5 million to increase the storage capacity. Fort Bragg got $8 million to redo the pipes that they had, which were about 100 years old. And so there's a lot of projects like that that we need to be working on. But really the key issue is finding out how much water we have, and then doing the appropriate measures we need to do. One of the key issues in the northern area is, water being extracted and sold, and from private entities, putting in a well in a valley and then shipping it off into the hills.
Thank you, John. We'll have you take a swing at this next question here. As you know, in the history of Mendocino County in the 80s, 90s, we experienced a culture war with the forest defenders and the logging industry. Currently, the recent flare-up of that culture is the Jackson Demonstration State Forest issue, where there's been protests and contention between those same communities. Can you give your perspective on these issues, comment on the balance between jobs, sustainable forestry, and mitigating climate change?
Right. Well, this issue has been critical for Mendocino County in the last few years. And certainly, everyone's concerned about the sequestration of carbon. And so the feeling is that the forests are the best place to do it. Certainly on the coast, there are a lot of people who use Jackson State Forest for recreation. It's a place where people hike and bike and do all sorts of activities, enjoy the redwoods and the forest there. I think that CAL FIRE, which has been overseeing Jackson State Demonstration Forest, hasn't kept up with some of the latest scientific studies. And so that's what the board requested of the state, to make sure that the timber harvest plans for Jackson State were in alignment with the overall goals for climate change that the state has put in place. Okay. With that said, we do have other interest in Jackson State Forest. We have people who are concerned about fire danger and making sure that the forests are healthy. Okay, how do we do that? Is it thinning the trees? Is it, clearing out the brush? Is it doing prescribed burns? We need to be looking at that. And that Jackson State is a demonstration forest and it's unique because of its the redwoods there. And so we need to be doing those studies so that the best timber practices can be implemented. And I think that, my position was that we needed to have a seat at the table. So I've talked with Chief Luke Kendall from CAL FIRE, and their representation on the Jackson Advisory Group, which sets the policy for Jackson State Forest.
Sorry about that, John.
2 minutes up there. Clay, same question. What are your thoughts on this balance between jobs, sustainable forestry, mitigating climate change, this continuation of that culture war within Mendocino County?
Well, I'm certainly very much in favor of defending the Jackson State Demonstration Forest. It was deeded to California for the very purpose of being a demonstration forest, and it's worked very, very well for the past 73 years. There's probably more known about that area because they've done a lot more research and testing and trying different methods of forestry in that area than probably any other place in California. It's a remarkable area. Um, I know prior to its existence as a demonstration forest, it was used for grazing sheep, and then before that, it was actually a full-on forest that was just simply logged. So I think that it's a good thing to do. As far as climate change and this sort of thing goes, uh, I'm not one that buys into that very readily. I think that although there's some things that people can point to where it's hotter at this time or has different wind variations. Overall, the computer models that support climate change are very, very sketchy. And I look at putting money and time and effort into dealing with that issue has not been very substantial or something that can be verified. I'm very, very good about looking into all kinds of things, but ultimately these things must be verified. And to just go full on ahead with it and say that we have climate change is a little sketchy. I know that probably the biggest greenhouse gas that we have is not necessarily things that have to do with carbon dioxide, but water vapor, which is probably greater than 75% of all the.
Sorry about that,
Hey.
Clay.
John, I want to give you an opportunity to rebut. You get 1 minute.
Okay, yeah, what I was saying about my position about getting board representation on the Jackson Advisory Group, you know, so that when they are setting policy for Jackson State Forest, that the Board of Supervisors representing the people of Mendocino County has a seat at the table. And so that's what we're pushing for. I think that's the right way to go because we don't need just the scientists or the people in Sacramento making the decisions for what affects our communities and what our vision for the future is. I think I differ with Mr. Romero because 8 out of the last 10 years have been the hottest in recorded history. And so if you don't believe in climate change with that statistic, I don't know what's going to make you think differently.
Thank you, John. Clay, 1 minute rebuttal.
Yeah, as far as climate change goes, I well understand that it has been hot here in the last several years, and I fully understand that. But I'm also aware that there has been, up until 1985, there was predictions by people that are thought to be good scientists saying that we were going into a global cooling. So I'm very, very skeptical of trying to guess what's going on the global landscape of weather reporting. It's just not really panning out. It might be somewhat hotter here at this particular time, but that doesn't mean it's going on throughout the whole world. And when we're talking about global climate change, we have to take into the whole scope of the earth, as well as the heat of the water and the ocean.
Sorry, Clay. You will be up first for this next question. Measure V received over 60% of the vote in 2016 that declared intentionally killed and left standing trees as a public nuisance and makes those responsible liable for damage and subject to fines for violations. However, the voters of Mendocino County have seen little to no action in regards to enforcement. If elected, how do you plan on addressing hack and sort practices in Mendocino County? Again, Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know the particulars about this particular topic, although I do know that if there's some kind of herbicide that's being administered, I would really like to know specifically what that is and how much and what's going on. I'm a little troubled by that they've been using this on a particular species of tree, the tan oak, I believe, and I'm wondering how come those trees are just simply not being made good use of. So it is something I'm looking into further, and I'm sure I'm going to hear a whole lot more about that. I want to do my very best to make good, efficient use of all the tree species that are around us, and not to be creating an environmental hazard in the process. Thank you.
John Hashack, 2 minutes.
Right. Well, Measure B was the hack and squirt ordinance that was passed by the citizens of the county. And I got onto the task force to deal with Measure B and how to enforce it. And one of the things we were waiting for was this opinion from the state attorney generals. So Supervisor Williams and I, when we were in Sacramento, we went to the attorney generals and we said, here's a letter from Mendocino County requesting an expedited opinion on Measure B, because it had been sitting there for about 2 years at that point. Okay. So shortly after that, we got a response from the Attorney General saying that they would not opine on Measure B, whether it was legal or not for us to enforce it. Okay, because they had a conflict of interest, they said. So with that knowledge that they weren't going to get involved in it, we kicked it back to the county council, and the county council was supposed to come back to the board with ideas on how to enforce it. We had the pandemic and some of the things that were important got pushed aside because the pandemic took more of our time. And so since that time, I have been working with people to try to use tan oak. We thought we had a person who was going to come and build a mill in Mendocino County to deal with tan oak, and that's the species that Mr. Romero refers to. But the implementation of it, we've got huge tree mortality issues throughout the county for climate change and then this issue. So we're trying to deal with both of them.
Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yeah, I do appreciate that the John and Mr. Williams from the 5th District went out to the state capitol to inquire about this. I know that there's a certain point there where it's got to be frustrating. There's a certain point where the things that need to be done here, there is a time limit on it. And maybe I'm not as patient as some, but I would tend to only allow so much time before there's a certain point where I just have to say, well, I'm going to cast my vote to do this or to do that. I would be very, very skeptical. I would be very, very skeptical though of this, whatever this stuff is that they're using to squirt into the tree, because I'm very mindful about taking care of the land. Thank you.
John Hashack, 1 minute.
Yeah, just as far as Mr. Romero's comment about time limits, I totally agree. There are time limits. And with climate change these days, we have a time limit and we need to take action. I've been proud that the Board of Supervisors has taken real affirmative action to combat climate change. One of the last things we want is these herbicides that are used in hack and squirt in the forest. But, the ordinance was written in a way that didn't exclude those herbicides. People thought it would, but it didn't. And so that's what I found out with this ad hoc group dealing with Measure B. So what do? We fight climate change, and we try to limit the amount of herbicides in the forest, and we need to look at tree mortality, okay, overall.
Thank you, John. Let's let you lead off on this next question here. So this has to do with PG&E's vegetation management program, which has caused some controversy as of late. Some describe these mitigation efforts as clear cuts, undermining other fuel reduction projects like shaded fuel breaks. There's reports that PG&E contractors have shown up unannounced on private land, aggressive behavior reported. Can you share your thoughts on PG&E's strategy and how you would address landowner concerns regarding this?
Yeah, good question, because this is really an important topic for Mendocino County and lots of California. The PG&E has had this court decision where they can do whatever they need to do, basically, to prevent their lines from having tree strikes. I've attended several community meetings about what PG&E is doing, and some of the PG&E supervisors have been there. There's some outrageous behaviors. We're seeing clear cuts going on. I just drove over to the coast the other day, and just Highway 20 looks like a mess, with these. You can't clear cut your way out of a forested county like Mendocino. And there's questions about how many tree strikes actually cause wildfires. And so the Board of Supervisors has a couple items on the agenda tomorrow. I'll be supporting them. And those are letters to the governor and the Office of Infrastructure to really put a moratorium on PG&E activities until we can better understand what the implications are of what they're doing. I think the better way of doing it, and I wish PG&E would have done this from the start, was to work with the fire safe councils, to work with the people who are working on healthy forest. If they would have been collaborating and figuring out what the best way of
3 seconds.
creating safe, power lines, and due to their own, lack of foresight, let's work together, and we could have made safer communities instead of just clear cutting. But instead, they went ahead, they've clear cut. We're going to have bigger problems in the future because brush is going to grow up, and they've been leaving a lot of trees down on the ground. So work with us, not.
Sorry, John. Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I too have been getting reports about people being very concerned about the just too many trees they believe that are being cut down. I can well understand that there's trees that are dead or dying that are near power lines, and that's one thing that needs to be dealt with, because they are going to have to come down. I know just in front of my own house, I had a madrone tree that was hanging over the power lines, and that absolutely needed to come down. But I'm getting reports of people being very concerned where they're taking out trees that are otherwise considered to be healthy, or at least in their view, and or they're otherwise concerned about the potential of these trees falling down and hitting the lines from at least in PG&E's view. I'm a little understanding of PG&E because they just went through a very tremendous lawsuit. They had to come up with a lot of money. I can well understand why they would be very concerned that they don't want anything to start a fire, because they probably could not withstand another lawsuit like they had been subject to. So I can see where they'd be pretty good about going out and clearing out anything that's near their lines. Now, as far as the crews being aggressive, my experience has been very much the opposite. In fact, I've met some of the guys that are the point guys that go out and talk to people, and they're very, very understanding, and they don't want to see anybody being pushed aside or anything like that. They're trying to be very sensitive to the wishes of the local residents. Thank you.
John, 1 minute response.
Yeah, well, PG&E got into this mess because they didn't invest in, putting their lines underground or the new technologies that, can instantly switch off the electricity if a line is broken. And so now they're trying to clear cut their way out of it. I don't think that's the right way to go forward. We just got $22 million as a county from the PG&E settlement for the Redwood Complex fire. And we're putting that to good use of creating healthier forests, safer communities, and hardening houses, those kind of activities. I think that PG&E needs to invest in putting the lines underground, the new technologies, and doing those things that their investors might not like, but which would better serve our county and communities.
Thank you, John. The next question.
Clay Romero gets 1 minute.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. Clay,
Yay!
please.
Yeah, I think the part of the problem actually was that before some of the fires came about, PG&E was in some ways directed into dealing with issues of climate change. And they were attending to that rather than the maintenance of the facilities and the lines that they had. So I think this probably factored into their decision to not be doing as much maintenance as they could. But there are other things that can be done. I know certainly putting the main trunks of the power lines into the ground would be very, very helpful, and it would protect them and keep them available. Even in terms of
15 seconds.
even if they were to have fires or things that broke out, at least their lines would not be subject to that, nor would they be causing the fire. Thank you.
Okay, this next question says the cannabis industry has long been the economic backbone of Mendocino County. What are your plans to improve the current state of the economy, and how do you intend on uplifting the farmers that currently hold a county license? Clay Romero, 2 minutes.
Okay. Let me grab this here. Yep. As far as the cannabis industry goes, I know there's one thing that's just an overwhelming problem. There's an oversupply condition currently. And so the value of cannabis products is very, very, very low. And it's very, very hard to do anything about that. But I am very much in favor of changing the policy of the county so as it's less abusive towards people that are not only growing cannabis, but just other things that require permits. But specific to the people that are in the cannabis industry, I'd like to see if it can be kept where the growers are the mom and pop growers of the area, which I think are very valuable, and not to have the enormously large grows come in. I think that would be very detrimental to our local people. I do want to see that when people go and request permits, that the laws that they're dealing with don't change, that the people are competent that are dealing with the cannabis ordinance. And quite frankly, after reading through the cannabis ordinance, I could see where I would probably want to rewrite it. This is something that they have just a lot of information here, and the different levels of permits that I think can be simplified a great deal. This is, I guess if I were to sum this up, it's when you grow marijuana or cannabis, please don't irritate your neighbor. Thank you.
John Hashack, 2 minutes.
All right, well, cannabis has been an integral part of our communities for many years. It's vital to our economic well-being, even to, the restaurants, the car sales, everything depends in part on the cannabis industry. I'm pleased that in the governor's budget that he proposes to eliminate the cultivation tax as of July 1st, 2022. That was something that I pushed and the county legislative team pushed. Okay. And also there was $20 million there to increase retail establishments in counties that really don't have retail. That's a critical issue so that we can get the illegal, parity with the illegal market, because right now that it's been crushing the legal market. At the county level, we got $18 million to to make sure that people can get to their annual licenses. We need to make sure that we use that money wisely, that there are sufficient amounts of, $10 million of direct grants to help people get to their annual license. And we got $3 million from the equity grant. I've been working every day on this issue about the equity grants and making sure it's right. But we also need to ensure that we have a niche market in Mendocino County and Southern Humboldt. We have some of the best marijuana in the world. We need to work on cooperatives. We have to have direct sales. We need to eliminate the cultivation tax based on the size and really make it based on the percentage of sales. And we need to work on our staff and our communication.
Okay, Clay Romero, 1 minute.
Yeah, I very much agree with that, to try to keep things simpler, easier, and just more doable, certainly at the county level. I am grateful that the cannabis tax at the state level will be leaving, and I want to see where it's just a good business without necessarily bringing in the crime that was so prevalent back when things were illegal. And I very much want to get around that particular problem that we had at the time. So it's been an interesting time. I've been here long enough to where I saw the cannabis industry go from a couple guys down the street that wanted to grow a couple plants to a major industry. And I think it can come back again. Thank you.
John Hashack, 1 minute.
Yes, I'm very proud that I stood up and it was a lone vote against the corporate takeover of cannabis in Mendocino County with the new ordinance proposed by the other supervisors. I stood up against it. The people backed the referendum, got 6,000 votes within 6,000 signatures within 30 days. And the other supervisors came around and supported my point of view. I'm very proud to be supported and endorsed by the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance and the Covelo Cannabis Advocacy Group. Those two groups are working on behalf of the mom and pops, the small growers, and they're doing a phenomenal job of bringing the issues to the forefront, to the board. And I just really appreciate their endorsements.
Okay, excellent. John, this question goes to you, and both John and Clay. This is just a simple yes or no question. I do want to remind our listeners that you got to tune to KMUD's candidate form with those in the running for Mendocino County's 3rd Supervisorial District, which includes Laytonville, Covelo, and Willits. This is a yes or no question. John Hashack, we're going to go to you first. Do you support the use of satellites and drones to identify unlicensed cultivators to issue abatement notices? Yes or no?
Well, it's a tough one, but I would say no, because some of these grows are so big that we don't need satellites to tell that there's 100 hoop houses on a hillside.
Okay. Clay Romero, same question. Do you support the use of drones and satellites to identify unlicensed cultivators to issue abatement notices? Yes or no?
Yes, I think it would be just fine. I know that it just makes things a whole lot easier. So as people are not, you don't have to use manpower to go out and do it. You can just do it with a drone or a satellite. It's just to make it easier and cheaper.
Okay, thank you. Matt, we'll go to you with the next question.
Thank you, Lauren. John, we'll start with you on this question. The Potter Valley project, the hydro electric power plant at the headwaters of the Eel River, consisting of those multiple dams and the tunnel that's diverting water into the Russian River. As you know, this is a controversial topic here in Mendocino County. To the north, we've got local tribes and fisheries and environmentalists believing that we should remove the project and it would allow for the recovery in the eel for native salmon. To the south, agricultural interests and communities in Potter Valley and Sonoma County, they rely on the water that's being diverted. What's your perspective on the Potter Valley project and the proposed dam removal?
Well, Representative Huffman was a proponent of this two basin solution, and he was working with people from the 5 entities working on this: Sonoma County, Mendocino County, the Round Valley Indian Tribes, Humboldt County, and Cal Trout. I thought that the two basin solution was viable, and they needed to do a lot more studies on it to make sure that it would work. That's the huge question about whether it would work environmentally and economically for both the Russian River and the Eel River basins. So PG&E was a player. They were supposed to divest from or give up their license to the Scott Dam and the diversion, the Potter Valley diversion tunnel. But they ended up not doing that. They changed course, and now they're trying to keep it going. And so I think Congressman Huffman has been perplexed, and I've talked to some of the people on that commission, and they don't know where it's going. It's very expensive, but what we want to do is we want to ensure that the water that's needed for what's developed along the Russian River there's enough there, but we also need to look at the environment for both the Eel River and the Russian River. My district it's Eel River drainage. It's the watershed for the Eel River. So we need to make sure that that's taken care of too. And, as far as knowing which way it's going to go, I don't think anyone at this point really has an idea.
Thank you, John. Clay, 2 minutes, same question. What is your perspective on this Potter Valley project and proposed dam removal?
I don't want to see the dam removed, and I would like to see it modified at the Potter Valley project. I know there's some concern about fish being able to travel upstream. I think this is something that can be accommodated and still keep it in place. I think that a lot of the people that are critical of the Potter Valley project are people that don't actually live in the area. These are people that have no concern whether or not the water is going to run out of their tap or they're going to have the energy to use. The Potter Valley project is very good in that it's set up with a hydroelectric generator, which is a very important factor. I know that the state has already made a push towards having all electric vehicles by 2035. I think if they're going to do this, I think it would be very wise to build more power generation in the area, and getting rid of an otherwise functioning hydroelectric power plant would be a very foolish thing to do. I tend to disagree with Mr. Huffman, our representative. I think that it's an extremely valuable resource that we have. I think there's maybe some upgrading that we could do to it to make it better, but just simply pulling things out and continuing on that way would probably even be bad for the fisheries, for the fish downstream as well, because it's a good holding area for just that much more water to ensure that the fish have something to live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clay. 1 minute response, John.
Well, this whole idea that the functioning hydroelectric is going to power cars into the future. This project, the diversion, is the transformer went out. And so that's part of the problem, is that it hasn't even been generating electricity. PG&E says it's not making money on it. And so that's why they wanted to get rid of it. They're losing money. And this transformer is going to cost something like $8 million. PG&E really didn't even want to invest that money to keep it going. In the meantime, we're looking at water security for both.
15 seconds.
Yeah, what we need to really look at is how do we provide water security for the people in the Russian River Basin and the Eel River, and how do we save the environment for the fish and everything else that relies on this water?
Thank you, John. Clay, 1 minute response.
Yeah, that was interesting that John had mentioned how the transformer was going to cost $8 million. You know, I'm not sure, quite, how this is coming about. Maybe it's something that PG&E mentioned, but frankly, I've been in manufacturing a long time. I can look at all kinds of mechanical things and find a solution for it, and I don't need to particularly go to other people to any great extent to find out what to do. I think that it can be done much more inexpensive than that, and I think we can get that back up and running. A lot of what I do is machining and manufacturing. I think it can be done just fine. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
since
you.
we only have 20 minutes left, I'm going to combine these next two questions and feel free to answer them to the best of your ability. First, multiple sovereign tribal nations are located within the 3rd District of Mendocino. Can you talk about how you intend on collaborating with our region's First People and prioritize their needs? The second part of that question relates to the Caddo tribe and other Laytonville residents who are demanding action in regards to the 2018 survey that appears to confirm the anecdotal reports that rare cancers and birth defects are occurring at an alarming rate due to 2 online landfills a mile apart near the rancheria. So if elected, how will you help with these issues? And Clay, you're up, 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, this is the first I've heard about the problem with the rancheria and the landfills that are nearby it. This is something where that landfill at this point, I'm sure, is huge, and at this point, it would probably require an enormous amount of dirt moving, which would be very, very expensive. This would also probably come into the guise of the federal government with their environmental cleanups section of things to look at. And I would be very, very amenable to looking into these sorts of problems to find out just what we really have here. It is very, very concerning when there's a lot more cancer going on. And I would like to find out exactly what the source of that is. Now, it could be these landfills. That's a good thing. But it could also be other things that work into people having unusual cancers. And so I'm very, very sensitive to this type of issue. And I'm also familiar with testing for radiation and toxins and all that kind of thing. I've been very familiar with radiation in particular for a very long time, and how to measure it and to check for those sorts of things. But you could pretty much count on me to look into this and to find out what we can do to get to the bottom of the issue. Thank you.
John Hashack, 2 minutes.
Well, yeah, the issue with how would we deal with sovereign tribes? And I think that there's a history going back 527 years of distrust between tribes and, the invaders. One of the first things I did as a supervisor was I got Columbus Day changed to Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the work that I've done with the tribes. Mary Norris, the tribal chair for the Caddo tribe, has endorsed me. Saturday, I had a meet and greet up in Covelo, and 4 of the 5 tribal council members and other members of the tribe came to the meet and greet. It was a great, beautiful day because we got to talk with a group of about 30 people about the issues that we all have in common with Round Valley area. And so I really appreciate the work. And I think that, with working with the tribe, it comes down to trust. It comes down to communication and respect. And that's what I've been working on my whole life. And so with the issue with the Caddo landfill, it is worrisome. I walked
30
it
seconds.
with Mary Norris, Ada Stevenson, and others. We went up there a couple months ago on a very cold day, walked around the landfill, looked at what the issues are, talked with some of the consultants, the experts, and we will be looking further into this situation. So it's unfortunate what's happened with the cancer cluster around there, but we will be, there's a meeting in June, I'll be in attendance.
Sorry, John. Clay, 1 minute.
I'm grateful that both John and I are on board for looking into the matter further. I certainly will be very much up to speed as a result of this conversation. Probably the one thing I would disagree with is the pushing for the changing of the name of a holiday to the Indigenous Peoples Day. I think this is perhaps a mistake. This is kind of like rewriting history, and I find that not in accord with the values that the vast majority of Americans would hold. I think that if we can stop thinking about the original peoples that lived here, for want of a better term, they are us, and I intend to treat them just like myself.
Sorry about that. John Hashack, 1 minute.
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that answer that Mr. Romero just gave, so I really don't know how to address it. I'll just say this again. I'm very proud of how I've related with the tribes of Mendocino County. It's a real love of mine of treating people with respect and recognizing the history of the Indigenous peoples of this county. It's a history, not rewriting the history, but understanding the history that we need to be aware of. And so I'm looking forward to great relations with all people, but especially people of those sovereign tribes.
Okay. I believe we have time for one more question before we allow some outros. So Matt, take it away.
Thanks, Lauren. So in 2020, our nation came to a more acute understanding of law enforcement's killings of unarmed people of color. And in the wake of that, the Mendocino County chapter of Black Lives Matter joined forces with the Sheriff's Department and proposed the creation of a public safety advisory board to facilitate communication between public, law enforcement, increase transparency and safety. While this ordinance was created in 2020, many feel there's sort of been a lack of action from the Board of Supervisors and implementation to appointing members. If you were elected third district supervisor, who would you appoint to serve on the Public Safety Advisory Board? And what would you do to see that there was follow through with this ordinance? I believe we're going to start with, I believe it was Clay for this first
Okay.
time around.
That's kind of an interesting thing that you bring up. I generally viewed what has happened in 2020. I was very surprised to see that there would be municipalities out across the country that want to defund their police, for example. I think that was probably a very foolish thing to do, and it resulted in probably the deaths of some people in those areas. I'm not someone that's in favor of something like Black Lives Matter because I view it as rather divisive, even racist. Anytime I come across something where it's promoting some particular group in some particular way, I just don't do that. I'm very mindful about, because people are obviously going to be different in some ways, but I'm certainly not going to differentiate or give preferential treatment or be critical of anybody based upon their skin color or their race. I just simply don't do that kind of thing. And to have somebody like Black Lives Matter receive any sort of credence for what they're doing, I just don't see that. I think all people matter. And it's very, very important to me that there's no divisive sort of verbiage that's going out there that would jerk our chain and cause us to do foolish things like defunding police departments. Thank you.
Thanks, Clay. John, 2 minutes.
Well, okay. I was a sponsor of the Public Safety Advisory Board. I was on the ad hoc committee that set it up, and we worked very closely with Sheriff Kendall. We worked with people from Black Lives Matter. We worked with people from the tribal communities, Hispanic communities, people that represent this county. There's an issue with white privilege that we need to all recognize, and that, not everyone is being treated differently. And so the Public Safety Advisory Board, and we had buy-in from all areas of the county, all different ethnic groups, geographic areas. And we came up with this board. Unfortunately, it hasn't been in operation yet. And I brought it up a couple times with the board. Chair Williams appointed himself to the board. And so I don't understand why we haven't really gotten it going. But my appointment is Laura Betts, who is a tribal member from Round Valley. And I think she's the aunt of Khadijah Britton. She understands what communities need for public safety. The idea of this Public Safety Advisory Board is to get people together to talk about what the issues are in their communities, have open communication between the sheriff's office, other law enforcement offices, and the communities. And it could be a liaison where information is a conduit both ways, so that we have better communication, so that we know what the issues are, and that we don't have situations that we've seen across the country. I don't think we will in Mendocino County. And
sorry, John.
Thank you, John. Clay, we're going to give you a minute response.
Yeah, thank you. I look at this issue of if we're basically identifying certain peoples with some kind of preferential treatment, and I'd like to see that be minimized, because I think I'm mostly a white guy, but not necessarily. I'm also part Latino. So I just don't see this as something that's really particularly necessary. But I do want to see where we certainly reach out to people for whatever their safety needs are, and how best to work with them in that regard. But as people, as we are all Americans, I could be called a Native American myself. I was born here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Clay. John, 1 minute opportunity for response.
yeah, as far as preferential treatment, I think there are cases where we need to look at what different communities encounter, what their experience is. We certainly saw with the pandemic that, we had situations in the Hispanic community where they were being hit at a much higher rate than other communities were because of housing. These social determinants of health were critical. And so we had to look at those. I'm very proud that I started the Promotores de Salud program, working with Nuestra Alianza, a great program in Willits that was a pilot for the county on how to get outreach to those communities. I'm very proud too to be endorsed by Sheriff Kendall, former Sheriff Tom Allman, because we're working together to look at these issues that involve all the county, because we are in this together, regardless of where you live or who you are in this county.
Okay, and I believe that's time for us to go to our outros. I stated we would do reverse alphabetical order since we did start alphabetical. Clay Romero, you get 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. You know, I'm so grateful to be running for this office. I've been able to get out there and meet a lot of people. I'm enjoying an enormous amount of support, of which I'm very grateful. There's some things that I would like to do to make things a little bit easier for people that go to the county. One of the things I'm considering is when somebody goes to get a permit for something, I would like to see them get a significant break on their property taxes for that particular parcel, so as they're not put upon so heavily by the initial costs. I would like to see that initial cost for whatever the permit is to be a lot less. I've heard numerous examples. One of which that came up was a good friend of mine. He was looking into getting a zoning change from residential to commercial. And he explained to me that the county wanted $11,000 up front to consider doing that. I think this is a bit abusive on the part of the county, and I think that the policy needs to be changed. It should be an easy matter to consider these sorts of things. I don't know the exact cost of things, but I'm quite certain it wouldn't be exceeding even $1,000 to consider whether or not something needed to be changed. I want to see where also, if that permit is not fulfilled in some kind of timely way, that if it comes down to where it just simply can't be fulfilled and finalized to where it works, I want to see the county give the money back to the guy. I think by doing this would give good incentive for people to step forward, take advantage of the opportunities that they have, that we could have a robust economic activity that would result from this, and ultimately end up being better for the county. I think it's important to note that it's always good to have whatever's good for the people will then become good for the county, and not the other way around. So I'm very, very mindful of this, and well, I've been a business guy for a long time, and I know how things work, and you just can't be abusive on people for too long. Otherwise they'll walk away and just try to do their own thing. But thank you. And I really appreciate what you've done here for this program.
Thank you so much, Clay Romero. And 3-minute outro, John Hashack.
All right. Thank you, Laura. And thank you, Matt. I really want to appreciate KMUD and MendoFever for helping to put this on. This is a great thing for democracy, for the people of the 3rd District and other areas to hear what the candidates are representing. You know, my whole thing is working together with people to make positive change in our communities. And I've been endorsed by our elected officials, from Representative Huffman to State Senator McGuire, Assemblymember Wood, down to our local officials too. You know, the entire Brook Trails board has endorsed me. The mayor of Willits, 2 other council members from Willits, the chairs of the MACs, the chair of, like I said, Mary Norris from the Caddo tribe, many elected members, and also groups. You know, the SEIU 1021, who represent the county workers, SEIU 2015, who represent in-home healthcare workers who are doing critical jobs in our communities. And also Mendocino Cannabis Alliance, the North Bay Labor Council, the Covelo Cannabis Advocacy Group, the Mendocino Democratic Central Committee. You know, all of these groups are supporting me. And then over 150 community leaders. Okay, they understand that we don't get these things done by one person working on them. It's communities, and it's people working together that we create safer communities. It's people working together that we create economic development. And with people, keeping an eye and being civically engaged, that's how we create good government. And so I look forward to another 4 years so that we can really work together and solve some of these key issues and critical issues that are facing our county at this point. Not just the county, but the state, the world, our environment that we live in. So my name is John Hashack. I'm asking for your vote, and you can find out more information at hashack.us. That's my website. Or you can email me at soupjh2022@gmail.com. That's soup, SUPEJH 2022@gmail.com. And, everyone needs to get out and vote and tell a friend to vote. Okay, June 7th is the date, but you can vote by mail before that. So thank you again, John Hashack. I appreciate you being involved in this discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, John Hashack, and thank you also, Clay Romero.
Gentlemen, thank you for this evening. This is going to conclude our KMUD News Candidate Forum with those in the bidding for the 3rd District Supervisorial District in Mendocino County. If you missed this forum, listeners, you can find an audio recording on the KMUD archives at kmud.org and also a video on KMUD News Facebook page.
I would like to thank our engineer, Katie Phillips, our timekeeper, Stella Gherkins, and my co-host, Matt LaFever, for helping to organize this event that gives the public the opportunity to participate in democracy. Again, if you appreciate this service that we provide for you here at Redwood People-Powered Community Radio, please consider making a safe and secure donation on our website. That's www.kmud.org. I've been your host, Lauren Schmidt.
And I'm Matt LaFever. Thanks for listening.
Good night, everyone.